Part 1. Forgotten. Now, before I start my story, I might as well set the scene, for this part at least. I had just turned 17 and had just had my first full transformation, in which afterwards I woke up in a cell completely naked, and a few days later I was suited up and sent to war. As the law stated, if you can't serve in the city after your first full transformation, you serve in the war. But unlike your average Lycan who had someone to help them serve in the city, I was always alone, no friends or family to help me. The only thing I had was a silver ring I wore around my neck on a piece of rope. Now, Lycans are weak against silver, but we can stand it in small amounts and build up a tolerance to it. However, if it pierces our skin, it still burns even in small amounts. The ring had some strange writing on it that I had no idea what it said at the time, but I'd had it as long as I could remember. Most of my life before my first time, I spent in the Lycan capital of Lycina, sleeping in abandoned houses scattered all over the city, and stealing food and the occasional pickpocket to stay alive, or in a nearby forest, which was the only place I ever felt safe, and where I would spend hours watching the trees and listening to the music of the forest, from the singing birds to the galloping deer. It always made me smile, although I wasn't above making a meal of the local wildlife, especially when cooked right. What I would have given to have stayed. Chapter 1. Looking around the area, I could see hundreds, maybe even thousands of Lycans, all willing to die for a cause I still couldn't get my head around. I have no idea why I'm even here. I always hated fighting and was always being teased by my fellow wolves, being called a mutt, which if you're a Lycan is just about the worst thing you could be called. Like the majority of Lycans, I was born one, but some of them were once mortal, who joined us after their villages and cities had fallen to the vampires. Or at least that's what I've been told. All my knowledge from the war is that it started over 500 years before I was born, and I'm only 17, fresh out of my first transformation, which most Lycans go through round about that age, give or take a year or two. "Get ready to drink their blood!" A booming voice came from the front. Then the army howled to the sky, light of the half-moon shining over them and bouncing off their blades and weapons. As the army marched forward, I was being pushed forward and bashed about left and right. I didn't want to fight. I'm barely out of my first coat, not even a true immortal yet. For the first few years after your first transformation, you have a very shaggy coat, normally matching your hair colour. But it's not just a fashion statement. Once your first coat starts to shed, that's a sign that you're nearing our so-called true immortal stage, showing that you've survived to adolescence. Looking forward, I could see the leader of our kind, who simply went by the name Silver. I'd heard stories of him, and how he could take on an entire army by himself, and win. He's tall, towering above us easily, about 6'8", give or take an inch or two, and that's just in his human form. The half-moon stood behind him, almost like a frame. He had short, spiky black hair that matched the colour of the night sky, and his brown eyes roared with anger. He wasn't wearing much, nothing besides a shoulder pad on his right shoulder and a pair of leather trousers. I didn't know much about him at the time, but if I knew then what I know now, I think I might have been better off dead. As the army marched forward, Silver barking commands left and right to the troops, while I tried to slow down to see if I could get the hell out of there, I kept getting pushed forward and the wolf behind me jabbing me in the back, Move it, mutt! I could feel the fear growing all over my body, becoming more rigid as I heard howls from all around, all preparing to die for the cause that they believed in, and that I thought was just stupid. For as long as I could remember, all I'd heard was that lichens are bred to fight against the threat, and I always asked the same question: why? And every time I either got beaten up or... nope, just beaten up. As I got pushed further and further to the front, I felt dread as I knew that every wolf in front of me will be killed. All I could hope was that I at least would get a quick one, and with as little pain as possible. Finally the army stopped, and I was just behind the front line, and what I saw made my heart sink, and my legs turn to jelly. An army of vampires and familiars, easily several times the size of ours, and none would stop until every one of us was dead. Familiars are humans who have been fed vampire blood for an extended time and have become addicted to it, so much so that it causes them physical pain if they go without it for an extended period of time. I looked up at Silver. His teeth had turned into fangs, dripping with spit as he glared at the army in front of him. Easy to see he enjoyed the feeling of battle. Silver drew his blade and pointed it to the air, signaling the army to ready for battle, and the sound of weapons being drawn echoed in a symphony of battle. I looked at my weapon, a simple short sword, barely the length of my forearm, and had chips and stained blood on both the handle and the blade, showing its age. Before I could look up, I was pushed forward, forcing me into a run as the army charged forward, and within a few seconds we clashed with the vampire army with a loud and the sound of howls echoed and combined into a song of pain. Within a few seconds I had been knocked to the ground. Dazed, I crawled as fast as I could to the nearest set of rocks. All I could hear were screams, howls, and the clang of weapons, and the sound of claws slashing at flesh. As I crawled up behind the rocks, I looked around for anything that could help me, but all there was mud and blood, which gave me an idea. I scooped up a handful of mud and blood mixed together. "It's to stay alive, it's to stay alive," I murmured as I covered my face without making it sure to get a decent amount of blood around my neck and some of the mud in my ears so I could try and block out the noise. I lay back against a rock and closed my eyes and hoped that my new look would fool whoever came across me. After what seemed like hours, and only a few troops had passed me, barely even noticing me, and one or two bodies had landed next to me, I risked opening my eyes, and after a quick survey to see that no one was near me, I risked looking over the rocks to see that the battle was all but over. About 30 feet from where I was, I saw that only Silver, from what I could see, was left, surrounded by dozens of troops, with an equal amount lying in the surrounding area of Silver's feet as he wore their blood over his whole body. The troops kept their distance from him as he had his sword raised, which was dripping with blood. "Who's next?" he snarled, his mouth dripping with a combination of blood and spit. As almost by cue, 3 of the troops charged him, 2 of which went from the front, while the 3rd came from behind, trying to take him by surprise. With a swift movement, Silver used his blade and knocked one of the troops in front away, and with his left hand grew his claws and bore them into the troop's chest and yanked them upwards, tearing the man's armour and chest wide open as blood exploded, covering both Silver and the troops nearby. Before the dead troop could hit the ground, Silver dodged the 2nd and 3rd troop's swords and drove his own into the exposed neck of one of the troops, and he fell to the ground, the blade sticking out of his neck. The last troop swung his sword at Silver, but with ease he grabbed it in his hand. I could see Silver's hand begin to sizzle as his skin reacted to the silver blade, but only a look of annoyance came across his face, as if he had just stubbed his toe on a table. "Your blades need more silver," he chuckled, as he pulled the trip close to him with such force he ripped the arm clean off, and a stream of blood poured out of the trip as he clutched his arm once, screaming in agony. The remainder of the troops around Silver backed up. A smell of fear engulfed the area. "Am I being too rough?" Silver chuckled as he pulled his blade from the neck of the troop who lay at his feet. "I thought your masters would protect you from the big bad wolf. So where are they?" Silver swung his blade in his hand, teasing the troops to bring on a fight. With each swing of his blade, the troops seemed to flinch in fear more and more. "Move," a whispery voice echoed, sending chills down all over my body. Several of the troops parted, allowing a black-robed figure to emerge from the dark, blending into the night, barely visible to the eye. It moved calmly towards Silver, the robe only moving slightly with each step. "And who are you?" The robed figure remained silent as it continued to walk towards him. "Well, maybe you didn't hear me." Silver charged forward so fast that I could barely see him as he closed the gap between him and swung his blade at the robed figure. It dodged the attack, almost dancing as it was inches away from hitting. I caught a glance of shaped silver claws, like an object appeared, and scratched Silver in the arm as the robed figure moved away from him. "Fancy moves only get you." Silver shook his head. "What?" He looked down and noticed that a scratch mark on his forearm. His sword began to shake in his hand, and it fell out and hit the ground. "Good. Move." And he fell to the ground. The robed figure stood there for a few moments before walking over to Silver's body and turned to the troop and raised its hands. And within seconds, 5 troops dressed in silver armour with a wolf's head engraved on the chest piece placed a collar on him and placed some cuffs on his feet and hands, most likely made of silver, I'm assuming, and picked him up and dragged Silver away. As I tried to crawl back behind the rocks, a force hit me, knocking me at least 20 feet away from where I was hiding. I instantly clutched at my chest where I'd been hit. I was no medic, but I could at least tell that one of my ribs was broken, if not 2. I pushed myself up, clutching at my chest as I coughed some blood up. "So, I thought a wolf preferred to die in battle than hide," a suave voice whispered in my ear, making me stumble forward and turn to see a vampire wearing a very little armour. All I could see was some kind of armoured gloves and boots with some engravings on them. He was no taller than 5'7", give or take an inch or 2. He had long blonde hair that reached past his shoulders and covered a good portion of his face, but I could still see his emerald eyes as they gave me a stare of hate, but also of amusement, seeing that he liked to toy with his prey. The rest of his clothes were very fancy for a battlefield, more like something you would wear at a party or a wedding. A black coat vest on top of a light blue shirt with dark green trousers, and a long black cloak that was just barely touching the ground. "Well, I'm not that kind of wolf," I replied, pain in my voice as I clutched my chest. "I guess not," as he began to circle me like a predator ready to pounce. It gave me enough time to glance around the area and notice a small dagger a few feet away from me, but may as well be a mile away. "Would you like to know the name of your slayer?" He waved his hand, making 4 small throwing knives appear out of nowhere, most likely plated with silver. I thought, he likes to talk. Maybe I can use that. But of course, my fine sir, I replied in my best manners as I inched my way towards the dagger. Such manners! From a wolf, he replied as he threw one of his knives, hitting someone behind me. I turned to see a Trip clutching his throat as blood flowed out while he fell to the ground dead. He let out a chuckle. I can't let you die without telling you then. You may call me Lord General Lemar Trinity. He raised his hand, holding his knife to the sky, and took a bow, not taking his emerald eyes away from mine. My hands began to shake, as I knew that I was all but dead. The question was, would Lord General Lemar Trinity make it quick or slow? For some reason, I knew that it would be far from quick if Leo had anything to do with it. I looked at the dagger again. Go on, Lemar said. He gestured to the dagger. If you think you can get to it before my knife gets to you. He threw one of his knives, and I managed to build up enough strength in my legs to launch myself with the dagger, rolling as I hit the ground. But I wasn't quick enough, as his knife buried itself in my side, and I fell short of the dagger. The silver of the knife began to burn me from the inside as my body reacted to it. Fuck! I screamed as the pain began to spread slowly, causing me more and more. Oh, does it hurt? Lemar stood laughing as he walked towards where I was lying. I looked for the dagger, struggling to lift my head to the pain. It was only an arm's reach away. I lifted my hands and my fingers touched it. Too late, and Lemar kicked the dagger away from my hand. So close. I thought you would have put up a better fight, he stated, disappointed. It was the little fight I could put up. You're not worth me killing. And he walked away. Anger began to fill up inside me. Not worth it, I thought to myself, and this angered me. My heart rate increased as it sent a surge of adrenaline through my body. I rose to my feet, unable to stop myself, as I reached down and pulled the knife from my side and threw it at Lemar. Lord! A trooper shouted at Lemar, as Lemar turned, the knife hitting his left eye, and a wail of pain came from him as he clutched his face and yanked the knife from his eye. I stood watching as he wailed in pain, then I fell to the ground. The surge of energy I had suddenly got was gone, and then everything went black.